Beyond any doubt, Australian animator Felix Colgrave has achieved an extraordinarily distinctive style. Through his work, one can discern an ardent fascination with the natural world, with its cycles of creation and annihilation, with its tenderness and its pain. His films ooze and bleed with wonder. Surreal, uncomfortable, and mesmerizing, their particular flavor of strangeness is one that demonstrably resonates with a tremendous number of people. The subject of our video today, Double King, has been viewed over 100 million times since its 2017 publication. Yet despite their popularity, there is so far little published analysis of what these films accomplish as art and how. Let's help change that. Colgrave's stories tend to feel less like cogent narratives and more like a roller coaster of consecutive images, each one connected to the next by gravity and wind rather than by a diagrammed plot or three-act structure. This sprouts from the artist's stated creative process of not relying on a script or concrete storyboards, but, for the most part, making it up scene after scene, and there is never any dialogue. The result is films that aren't easy to pull solid points from, but are alluringly fluid. So you have to wait for the ideas to coagulate, and they will remain slippery. With that said, Double King does have one obvious core message: greed leads to oblivion. But what kind of greed? What kind of oblivion? Who and what even is this titular creature? Many subtleties lie behind the cloak. And, notably, Felix Colgrave already told us what it's all about. The YouTube description reads, "A film about love and regicide." This is paratextual, but it's also right there. And, while regicide is self-explanatory, love? Double King is about love. How so? Welcome to Reconstructed. This is where I'd put a spoiler warning, but you clicked on a 20-something minute video about a 9-minute film that is available for free on this platform. Go watch it now, and then come back, please. This video will be structured as a series of questions, and in the process of attempting an answer to each, we will arrive at an interpretation of what Double King as a whole says. Let's start here. Part 1. What is a king? In the world of Double King, a king is not an arbitrary invention of the human mind like it is in reality, but rather a state of being conferred by some inherent rules of nature. There seem to be two ways that something can become a king. First, an organism can gain kinghood if they are nourished by an existing king, regardless of how closely they are related. The king cloud's reign turns an ordinary pumpkin into a king pumpkin. Then, by eating a small part of that pumpkin, an ordinary fly becomes a king fly. As far as we can tell, this method is basically free. There is no indication that the cloud lost its status by growing the pumpkin, so you can imagine how kinghood could proliferate across nature without necessitating any harm being done. By the way, I use the word king to describe the general concept because of the film's title, but many of the monarchs in the film are actually queens, which we know because they are all listed in the credits, and it took me so long to notice that. For educational purposes, their names and genders are on screen now. The second method of becoming a king is, of course, the crown being transferred to another being. While it can be created by natural forces, kinghood is still stored in a physical object which is separate from the king's body. Removal of the crown, either by willing abdication or murder, or it just falling off, does immediately remove the status of being a king. Whoever wears it next is granted said status without question. In real life, a crown is just a synecdoche for wide political power. If you stole St. Edward's crown, you would not become the King or Queen of England and would, in fact, go to prison. And I know that you know that. But according to the logic of Double King, you would instantly become the monarch of England and your face would be on the £5 note the very next day, thief or not. This distinction between real kings and this film's reimagining of the concept is interesting and significant to what it ultimately says, but I shouldn't get ahead of myself. Now, what does being a king mean here? For one, it seems to confer some degree of physical prowess. The pumpkin grows larger, the cloud gets wetter, the fish is huge, the snake is gigantic, and even grew a couple tiny arms. The main character, who I will refer to as the Double King, and I hope that's not too confusing, is quite physically strong as well, although it's hard to say how much of that is from his crowns without being able to compare to other individuals of his kind. More on them later. Kinghood is also rewarded with property. The Rat King has a large befanged fortress, the Goat Queen has a mountaintop throne, the Mushroom King has private security. The Double King himself has an extravagant castle along with plenty of expensive weaponry, so material gain could be a motivation for becoming a king. Kings also receive followers. Even though Rat King Augustus the Agreeable was suddenly murdered in cold blood, following the funeral, his acolytes make the journey to pay their respects to his murderer. Because he has the crown, the Double King, as a simple matter of fact, is the king of the rats and therefore must be revered by them. Same goes for the squashes, flies, and snakes. So adulation from large crowds could be another motivation for becoming a king. In this film, we see monarchy conceptualized as something endowed by nature yet transferred to someone as easily as serving them lunch or taking their lunch money. Monarchy then grants strength, riches, and worship. If all it takes to get all that is a little violence, of course someone will choose that path. Where Double King starts becoming especially interesting to me is how none of the characters seem to cause any problems except the Double King, who then doesn't seem to care at all about any of what being a king actually gets you. Part 2. What does the Double King want? Well, we know what he wants, so the better question may be, what does he not want? While the Double King has gained a lot of wealth, he never seems to luxuriate in any way. The only time we see him doing anything other than chasing a crown, he is preparing to eat one singular egg in a modest-looking room, a task that apparently requires 2 forks, 2 knives, and a spoon. My point is that enjoying the benefits of his wealth does not appear to be a priority at all. The only time he seems to use what he owns is in the chase of another crown. He also does not care about his followers. The Double King's immediate reaction to the rat acolytes bowing to him is to set out a rat trap. If he were a sadist motivated by hurting people, he could easily kill them all directly, but instead all his new subjects are simply ignored, just left waiting at the door. He has no interest in them whatsoever. What's happening here? Usually people want to be king or czar or president not because of the title itself, but because of the incredible power the title awards. Not the case here. As far as we can tell, the Double King wants crowns solely for the sensation of obtaining them. When he first becomes the Double King, we see his pupils widen before the title flashes on screen, and it turns out his motivation never progresses further than that. Obtaining crowns makes him feel better than anything else, and he will do anything to get more, even though he doesn't really understand what he's interacting with. We witness the Caterpillar King willingly pass on his throne to undergo ritualistic metamorphosis into a butterfly of some sort. This character does not maintain his kinghood across transformation. He's now just one among many butterfly horse things. But the Double King fails to grasp that and hunts the butterfly down instead of going after the new Caterpillar Queen. It does not cross his mind that someone would choose to give up a crown, that there may be a purpose to these things beyond the having of them. Really, it may be as simple as that the Double King is attracted to the shape of a crown alone. He attacks the Mountain King without any possible plan for how he would actually carry a crown so large. He is visibly puzzled by the Mushroom King's crown with its atypical shape. While the lack of dialogue makes it impossible to say for certain, I tend to think he is confused about whether it's a crown at all just because it looks different than he's used to. Or maybe he's just wondering how to fit it on his head. Either way, he is immediately distracted by a cockatoo whose head feathers just happen to resemble a crown. The credits clarify that this cockatoo is not royal, it's just a regular-ass bird, yet solely because of that 3-pronged shape, the Double King quickly prioritizes chasing it over securing the real crown he stole seconds earlier. And this single-minded obsession with crown shapes directly leads to the Double King's demise. After losing sight of the cockatoo, he notices the small crown from the fly that he wears as a ring. Somehow, he thinks that he has encountered the Hand King and slices off his own finger. His driving impulse to obtain every crown leads to auto-cannibalism. The Double King bleeds to death right there in the garden. Yet Double King is not over, and it is the scene in the afterlife that drives home how unchangeable the Double King's desires really are. He learns nothing from his death. He is completely incorrigible. Upon landing in hell, he is unfazed until realizing his crown is missing, but then is immediately offered entrance to a party exclusive to deceased monarchs. As he reaches the fully stocked banquet table lined with all his victims, he is still greeted happily. Stop for a second to think about how good of a deal this is. Instead of non-existence or eternal torment, the Double King's afterlife is a feast. He will receive no punishment for his sins. He won. All he has to do is accept a crownless head. Death is ruler here, and only she wears the crown, even a napkin one. The Double King is no threat to her either. The rules from above do not apply down here. The game is over. But obviously he does not accept his incredible fortune, and instead, like in life, he is solely focused on obtaining a crown with nothing to say or think but throw a tantrum when he is denied. When Agatha, the matriarch of death, grows annoyed enough to humor him, he is thrilled but blinded, and runs right off the face of the earth into nothingness. From the way his eyes faded in and out when he first arrived, we can assume that when he made this jump, his consciousness ended permanently. At the end of the film, there is no Double King. The first lesson here is that the people who want power or objects at the expense of everything else will probably receive them. The most power-hungry and callous among us are often handsomely rewarded. The second lesson is that they have to stop somewhere. If one never learns to accept a place beside others instead of above them, they will surely, eventually, be completely obliterated. I think, though, we can still get more specific in our reading if we consider what the crowns most closely represent. As established, the crowns the film portrays are not very close to how the real object or royalty in general works in our world. All in all, though, they are pretty close to how money works. Money can bestow its owner with strength and worship, but is stored in a physical object separate from the owner's body. It can be transferred easily between people, even sometimes by force. No matter the morality of how you sought it, as long as you have it, you can reap the rewards. Double King, as a film, presents a perspective on what happens when someone wants money and nothing else. They win until they either learn humility or annihilate themselves. I, for one, sure hope so. Furthermore, referring to the Double King as a someone leads into my next question. Part 3. What even is the Double King? It is intentionally difficult to imagine what sort of body the Double King has underneath his regalia. All we see are his bulging eyes, massive grabby hands, and similarly large feet. And of course, by surprise at the end, his lines of long, sharp teeth. Because what he looks like is so obscured, it creates the impression that there is no body beneath the cloak, that he consists of a void from which body parts can be conjured as necessary. The biggest evidence of this is the third hand that emerges before slicing off his finger. Likewise, I do not necessarily think that he always had those giant fangs lurking in every scene, but that he could create them as needed in the moment. He does not seem to be beholden to one body shape. Regardless of exactly how fluid the Double King's anatomy is, he is not one of a kind. After rolling off a cliff, he sees other bulging eyes and massive grabby hands staring out from within a cave. Similar eyes peek out from the darkness in this shot of the mountaintop forest and this one of some hills, which is also the shot chosen to sit behind the end credits. So clearly the film wants us to notice that there are other beings like the Double King, but they live on the fringes, not sharing in his wealth or seeming to matter to him at all. We do not glimpse their broader society, if they have one, or learn whether they all share their king's ambition and cruelty, or if the Double King was an aberration. They are present, but unexplored. Unless, maybe, they are his weapons. Among all the various creatures of Double King, none of them share the Double King's eye design, the large round sclera with simple black Pac-Man shaped pupils, except for the cave dwellers and all of his strangely shaped servants. The walking throne right at the beginning, the flying bird mech, the lions pulling the tank itself, They all appear starkly different from each other except for the eyes. They are not simple automata either, proven by the tank being startled and confused by the gunshot. The eyes mean there is a conscious creature within. Conceptually, this is evocative of the imagery that has become central to much of Colgrave's later work. His 2023 film Donks heavily features that same sort of eye, accompanied by darkened creatures that squirm into a wide variety of physical shells. Another similarity between some of the Double King's weapons is the pitch-black, many-limbed body that seems to pilot the larger structure. This short animation titled Shapeshifter from his series Paper Loops is, to me, emblematic of the whole effective thrust behind Colgrave's art, this presentation of all kinds of life being united by a shared awareness. But it would take a whole nother essay to dive into just what I mean by that. My point is that eyes are a keystone image to understanding the worlds of Felix Colgrave. They are used in his films to convey central ideas. So, given their shared eyes, perhaps these beings are all the same species as the Double King, able to mold their physical form to fit any purpose. As tools, they are essential in the Double King's quest, yet are quickly and easily abandoned by him. Regardless of whether or not he employs those of his kind, he certainly cares about them no more than he does the rats. And then, in the beautifully animated psychedelic sequence that accompanies the Double King dying, the final image before it all dissolves into blood is row after row of that same specific eye, the round pupil with a triangle taken out. This choice creates, to me, a loose impression that the Double King is being watched or perceived in some way by others like him, none of whom are able or willing to help in this moment. He has isolated himself, and therefore, he bleeds to death right there. That is as far as I'm able to go regarding what the Double King is within the film's fiction. The next question is what he and his kind might represent symbolically. One productive interpretation I've found is that the Double King is people. There are multiple parallels between the Double King and humans that do not persist between the Double King and real non-human animals. People are also able to mold their shape, in a certain sense, to a wide array of forms. That is, our capabilities are not bound to our body shape in the way other animals are. People originally came, or at least the legend goes, from the caves. People too have an intense urge for domination and collection, often solely for the sensation of achieving it. Like the Double King, many of humanity's most powerful members care very little about others and have trapped themselves in an endless quest for more. Now, the hierarchies represented by the crowns are not an invention of humanity. The conditions of nature will inevitably create imbalances in power and resources, and living creatures trying to survive will exploit that. But even if there must be kings of some kind, an equilibrium can be reached as long as no one tries to become a double king. And that's exactly what people tend to do. We, as a species, are constantly seeking mastery over every possible thing. We grab any crown that will fit on our heads and many that won't. Not every individual behaves this way, or even most, but enough do that it is the total effect. According to Double King, where this leads is, again, oblivion. If humanity does not subdue its desire to dominate for domination's sake, we will destroy ourselves, and the planet, while damaged, will continue to spin. So is there a way out? Part 4. What is love? The films of Felix Colgrave brim with wonder and dread and joy. They are often both highly abstracted and meticulously attentive to the way things are. And they are created so that the second-to-second experience of watching them is very much the point. Colgrave's images are valuable not in service of hidden theses, but simply in the way they splash as they hit your eye. I say this because what I'm doing here, establishing a specific interpretation, while it is obviously something I consider interesting, worthwhile, and tremendously fun, does have a condensing and reducing effect on the art. I wish to clarify that while I think the messages I find are real, they will never be a complete solution. There is nothing wrong with seeing things in a totally different light, and every frame accomplishes more than could ever be explained. With that said, let's return to my starting question. How is Double King about love? In the end, I think the film is about love, in that love is what the Double King lacks. Evidently, he has no care or concern in any way for others, even those who are very similar to him. Other creatures across Double King are capable of grief, admiration, community, dedication, all things that could be considered forms of love. The Double King has none of that. His only love is for the crown, and that is no love at all. It follows then that Double King contains an easy prescription for how to avoid the outcomes it depicts. Experience love. If you love others and the world and yourself, you will not take the path the Double King did and therefore will not cause such destruction. Those who are devoid of love can obtain grand material benefits, but the road they walk is lonely and tapers into nothing. In the end, it is the path of love that persists. In the end, love wins. Hello, thank you so much for watching to the end. If you found this video interesting, I encourage you to watch Colgrave's other work and keep an eye out for his upcoming film, Wall World. Thanks, as always, to my supporters on Patreon. The only tier is $1 a month. Videos like these are only possible with the continued generosity of my patrons, with a special thanks to Cass V and That One Dog. For just $1, your name can join those on screen and you can receive early access to new videos, my Discord server, and semi-regular update posts. If you can't commit to a recurring pledge, I also accept tips on Ko-fi.com. And of course, it is also free and genuinely helpful if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, press the hype button if that still exists, and last but probably most impactfully, share the video around to wherever people may enjoy it, such as Reddit, Discord, or Blue Sky. Thank you, sincerely, for spending time with my words. There are many more videos to come. I've been Skyhoppers, and I'll see you in the next one.